An American flight attendant falls in love with a Parisian bartender and becomes obsessed with him. The opening of the movie is filled with a narration about Gina. It is said that she is a shy woman who never really engaged with the passengers a lot. That is, until she met Paul. On a flight to Boston, Paul noticed her and liked her warmth and her sad smile. Given that she's a flight attendant, her job involves a lot of traveling, so they wouldn't be together most of the time. She would send him letters and postcards from the places she visited, and even bring back souvenirs as decorations in their home. Their love was perfect for Gina, but Paul struggled, being left alone with her belongings all the time. Even though she was in her world of romance, Paul was struggling with his loneliness, so much so that he decided to end it all. In a letter he wrote for her, he states that she never loved him, and claims that she travels only to get away from him. Returning home from a long day of work, Gina is met with a horrific scene. Paul took his in their house for her to see. Despite going through such trauma, Gina returns to work almost immediately, with her colleagues becoming her closest friends. She doesn't want to share that and her colleagues fear for her sanity. The flight attendants arrive at Paris, and they're told that there's a layover. All of them get to their rooms at the hotel, but as Gina enters hers, she sees Paul standing in the middle of the room with a bouquet. However, she is snapped out of her thoughts as her colleagues call out for her to hurry up, because they're hitting the town. Going out with them, she thinks they're going to a bar, but she doesn't know that her friends have tipped off a fortune teller to help to tell her what she wants to hear. The fortune teller sees a man in her near future, but the first card Jin pulls is the devil. The card comes in later in the movie, but she lets her know that although it's a dangerous card, she can use it as she wants it. The next card she pulls is the best one, the sun. However, the woman tells her that the man she'll meet has something in his eye. Despite not being open with her friends, we find out through the narrator that Gina had been reading her horoscope and wanted to believe in faith. Following an outdated guidebook, the group heads to Green Inn, unaware of what it has become over the years. Half girls dance as Gina and her friends make their way to the bar. Gina takes a seat while her friends head to the bar to get drinks, and she happens to notice the bartender Jerome admiring her. As the night goes on, Gina indulges in a conversation with the bartender, laughing at his jokes about finding a uniform sexy. Taking her hand, he pretends to be a fortune teller, joking about seeing his apartment in her hand, claiming that they should go there. Despite having to work in the early morning, Gina ends up falling for the bartender's lines as they share their first kiss at the bar. Of course, they end up going to his place and making love, unprotected. The following morning, Jerome is woken up by Gina as she serves him breakfast in bed. While he seems to be casual about the situation, Gina looks at him with hope in her eyes. Noticing his swollen eye, she comments about it, and even gives him a kiss, which makes him uncomfortable. Getting dressed, he gives her a kiss before they exit the hotel room. As they stand by the elevator, he gives her his number and they share a couple of kisses, unaware of her colleague watching them. Gina returns to America, but can't seem to get him out of her head. The first thing she does is buy some Plan B, and we can see that her eye has swollen up as well. Time goes by, and Jerome doesn't respond to her texts, so she decides to visit him when she goes to Paris. His eye infection has spread to her, and even though her vision is cloudy, she doesn't mind. The next time they go to Paris, she wears her uniform for him as she enters Green Inn. At the bar, he is pouring some drinks when he notices her. Complimenting how sexy she looks, he asks her whether she wants something to drink. Gina leans in from the bar, wanting to give him a kiss, but he kisses her twice on the cheeks as a French greeting. Despite acting cold, they end up sleeping together once again. Same as the first time, she wakes up before him, but this time she decides to take pictures of him. The clicking sound wakes him up, so he asks her what she's doing. Quickly, she hides the phone and snuggles up to him, letting him know that she can stay for a few minutes before she has to go to work. They cuddle up as he admits to liking her, but doesn't want to be long distance. To his surprise, she lets him know that she's been thinking about moving to Paris. The exotic dancers give their all as old men admire them from their booths when Gina walks into the bar. It's been a week since she last saw Jerome, and she hopes to see him at the bar, but he isn't there. She ends up talking to a girl from New York named Charlie, and at the end of the night, she decides to head to Jerome's building. Ringing the bell for a long time, she checks his windows, only to notice that the light is off. The following morning, she tries her luck again, but there seems to be no sign of him. As a sign from the universe, she sees that an apartment is up for rent in the building opposite him, so she takes her chance. The landlord shows her the first room, and as Gina checks the window, she realizes that it's not that apartment, so she decides to call Charlie for help. They end up going to the apartment with the sign that overlooks directly into Jerome's windows, so she wastes no time and moves in quickly. On the call with her colleague, she explains to her that she needs rest, and lets her know that she'll be using her vacation days. As she's putting the stuff away, she sees Jerome in front of his building, so she runs out to talk to him. She feeds her delusions, as she's convinced that he positioned himself there only for her to see him. Despite him talking on the phone, she decides to interrupt and say hello. Surprised to see her, he hangs up the call and asks what she's doing there. She lets him know that she's decided to stay in Paris, but doesn't reveal that she's his neighbor. Looking at her swollen eye, which he feels responsible for, he asks her whether she needs some medicine, so they head to his apartment. As he puts eye drops in her eyes, she feels taken care of, so she gets the desire to please him as well. After being intimate, he starts dressing himself and claiming that he has to go, because he has some stuff to take care of. Curious, she asks what he has to do, and he reveals that it's his birthday. Jumping in joy, she showers him with kisses, wishing him a happy birthday. Not wanting to let him out of her sight, she offers to make a cake for the party, and he agrees. In the evening, we see them back at the apartment with a lot of people there. As the party goes on, she finds it hard to fit in, so Jerome suggests she make some snacks for everyone. After bringing out a platter, she indulges in conversation with one girl and slowly starts talking to the others. She opens up about her job, but people don't seem to want to listen, as one pair just walks away from talking to her. Jerome pushes the table so they can dance, and she joins the crowd, but he dances with another girl. A while later, his ex-girlfriend surprises him, and his attention falls on her. Gina pushes herself between them when the fire alarm goes off. Rushing to the kitchen, Gina takes out the burnt cake while trying to get the smoke out. As the party comes to an end, Gina falls asleep next to the couple that ignored her, while Jerome and his ex talk about their future. Jerome says goodbye to all of his guests, and Gina is the only one to stay. He lets her know that he's tired, and she suggests they go to bed. However, he calls her a taxi. Wanting to be accepted in her new adopted country even more, Gina goes to the countryside with Charlie, who shows her around. They take pictures as Gina poses, trying to look her best. Her problems start rolling in once her credit card gets declined. But unaware of how serious the situation is, she shrugs it off as Charlie pays. After having fun in the countryside, they head back to her apartment and drink some wine while dancing. Gina opens up to Charlie, given that she's her only friend in the country. Being a flight attendant is the only thing she knows how to do, and when it comes to getting a job, she doesn't even know what she would be able to do. Familiar with the bar, she decides to try scoring a job at Green Hill. She walks to the table where the boss and the translator are, serving them drinks in a normal way. However, he doesn't like it, claiming that it's a model's job. She needs to be more sensual, more sexy, and show herself off. He asks her to do it once again, so she tries her best to be sexy while doing so. The owner accepts her, and she starts working at the bar. Coming into the club, Jerome is surprised to see her behind the bar, so she lets him know that she's working there. Jerome pulls France, the owner, to the side for a chat, while the translator explains to Gina about the VIP guests. One night, as Gina's working the shift, serving an old perverted man, Jerome's ex-girlfriend comes to see him. Gina heads to the bar to make an order, and seeing her there, decides to have a conversation. Clemence doesn't seem to be interested in the conversation, but Gina seems to be excited to talk to her. She asks how she knows Jerome, and Clemence reveals that she's his ex. As Gina goes to serve the drink, Jerome reminds Clemence that Gina is the one who burned the cake at his party, so she finally remembers who she is. As her shift ends, France sits her down to talk about his impressions. He gives her advice on how to be more engaging with the customers, and to use her to advantage. France and Clemence get up and leave together, and all Gina can do is watch them. As Charlie tries to teach her some French, Gina can't help but be distracted by the entrance of Jerome's apartment. Wanting to express herself in his language, she asks Charlie how she can say, "I need you." Time goes by, and even though Jerome gives her no attention, she stays looking at his building and his windows, hoping to catch him. Voicemails from her friends roll in as they express their concern about her not answering. But Gina seems to be focused on one thing only. One night, she gets an idea and buys tickets for a trip. Knocking at his door, he opens up, not thrilled to see her there. She hands him the tickets, wrapped in a beautiful box, but he lets her know that he has work and can't come with her. At work, she asks where Jerome is, and France reveals that he is called in sick. Surprisingly, she sees her old colleagues there, and she's happy that they came to see her. They order shots, and as Gina pours them at the bar, France is not happy, claiming that she should have sold them a bottle. Late in the evening, Gina finally spots Jerome, but this time he enters the apartment with Clemence. Jealousy overcomes her, so she gets dressed up and heads to his apartment. He claims that he is busy, so she asks to use his bathroom. Walking into the apartment, she pretends not to know that Clemence is there and hurries to the bathroom. As Jerome sits down with his ex-girlfriend, Clemence asks him whether he slept with Gina. He admits to sleeping with her, but is sure that she slept with someone on tour as well. They start joking about their time apart, and Jerome gives her a kiss. Remembering that Gina is in the bathroom, Clemence goes to check on her. Wanting to play her game, Clemence offers her a drink, and even invites her to go out with them, wanting to embarrass her. They all sit in the booth at a karaoke show when the host calls out Gina's name. Confused, she refuses to go on stage, claiming that she hadn't put her name down. Clemence admits to putting her name down as a joke and pressures her to actually get on stage. Jerome is visibly upset as he notices the game she's playing, but Clemence doesn't admit to it. Gina gets on stage and ends up singing perfectly. Jerome's eyes stay on her through the performance, so she thinks that she's finally got him. After singing, she heads to the bar to take drinks for the both of them, but as she turns, she sees Jerome making out with Clemence. Heading to the bathroom, she stares herself in the mirror, before her obsession comes over her and she slams to the glass. With blood dripping down her forehead, she sits in the hospital with Jerome. He lets her know that he's glad she's okay, and she promises they'll do something special the following night. The following evening, she drags him to the fortune teller and demands she tell him all about love. Jerome draws 2 cards, and the woman reveals that his love is beside him. Not understanding French, Gina asks him to translate, but he doesn't want to tell her what the woman said, so he lies about his love coming to him soon. Her phone starts ringing, and he asks her to answer it. The woman informs him that his true love is the one he's already a couple with, and he realizes that's Clemence. While Gina is screaming at the phone, he takes the chance to ask about money, and the fortune teller lets him know that a lot of money is coming his way. Despite not believing in fortune tellers and crystals, the conversation he has with France makes him realize that he wants to settle down with Clemence. One night, he decides to surprise her at one of her gigs. As she plays for her fans on the stage, she sees Jerome looking at her with a smile on her face, and despite being broken up, it makes her feel good. After the gig, in a sea full of women, Jerome could only notice one, and he knew that she was going to be his wife. As their love was rebirthed, Gina fell into disrepair, not being able to bring herself to bathe or eat. After a dreadful day, Gina decides to go back to work. Given that she missed the previous day, Omar the security guard stops her from entering. She pleads with him, so he agrees to call France to the front. Before France can come, Charlie comes to talk to her, letting her know that she'll help her with France. However, Gina doesn't need her help, and having had enough of her flirting, she lets her know that she's not going to sleep with her. Pissed off, Charlie storms off. France comes to the entrance shortly after, and he lets her know that she's fired. Not knowing what to do with herself, she decides to go to Jerome's. Ringing the bell like crazy, he decides to talk to her by the door, but she forces herself in, claiming that her red earring is at his apartment. Gina starts going through the drawers, and Clemence goes crazy. As she rushes through his stuff, Clemence starts screaming for him to take her out of the apartment. Clemence continues to scream while Gina looks for her earrings. Having had enough, Jerome puts his clothes on and decides to take Gina home. Leaving the building, Gina tries to kiss Jerome, but he begs her to just go home. Agreeing with him, she takes his hand and pulls him to the building across the road. Confused, he follows, and as they get into the apartment, he goes to the window. Finally realizing what she's been doing, he goes off on her. Screaming in her face to leave him alone and return to America, he exits the apartment with rage. Despite him yelling at her, she still peeks out the balcony to see what they're doing, so takes it to his advantage. Opening the window and removing the curtains, he pulls Clemence into him, and they start being intimate with each other in front of her. Once again, Gina falls into despair. Falling into her sorrow, she doesn't get out of bed, nor does she do anything. As if the situation with Jerome hadn't been enough, she ends up getting evicted from her apartment. Using her pass as a flight attendant, she tries to get into one of the hotels they used to stay at, but her pass ends up being declined. Left on the street, not knowing what to do, she walks to a park and decides to take a nap on a bench. After falling asleep, she gets woken up by Jerome as they indulge in the most romantic dance. Filling her delusions, she dances with him in the dimly lit park as they let their bodies collide as one. Unfortunately, it all ends up being a dream, as she's awoken by a homeless guy attacking her. Luckily, she manages to get away from him and escape. As she continues to stalk the couple, something changes in her, and she seeks chaos. Wanting to get rid of Clemence, she hits where it hurts the most. As Clemence is trying on a wedding dress, Gina walks in and starts looking for one herself. The tailor notices her, and lets her know that he'll be with her shortly. Clemence notices her as well, and her face drops. As the tailor approaches Gina, Clemence listens to what she has to say, and breaks when Gina tells him that she needs a bigger dress, because she's pregnant. Visibly upset, Clemence demands he take off the dress immediately, and Gina leaves as if nothing happened. Using her goggles, she spies on the couple arguing, before Clemence returns Jerome the engagement ring and gets into a van. Not knowing what to do, Jerome stands on the sidewalk, so Gina takes the chance to approach him. Next, we see them at the doctor's for a checkup. The doctor comes back with the results, and before she can even say them, Jerome lets her know that she'll be having an abortion. However, the doctor informs him that she's not pregnant, so there won't be a need for one. Hearing the news he wanted to hear, he exits the room without saying a word, and tries to run away from her. Gina runs after him as he's on the phone, explaining to Clemence that he's not going to be a father. In a split second, he turns to cross the street, and a car slams into him. His bleeding body lays on the ground as Gina looks at it with a blank expression, caressing his cheeks. At the hospital, she signs some papers for him and takes his belongings. Taking the engagement ring from the box, she puts it on her wedding finger, and it fits perfectly. Walking into his hospital room, she sees his whole body in a cast. Given that he has taken good care of her, she wants to return the favor. Giving him a kiss, she almost takes his breath away, but pulls away just in time. His phone beeps, and as she opens it, she reads a message from Clemence. She texts her to stay away. Putting his phone down, she takes out hers and gets closer to him. Taking a picture with him and the engagement ring, she decides to use it as proof to brag to her friends about him, but to also feed her delusions.